Sam. When you hear Coach Rhule talk about the offense being dominant, on the scrimmage on Saturday, is there any part of you that doesn't take him at face value there? Because he does qualify it a little bit. Says, he let some plays run a little longer than they normally would.
I think he is talking. I think he was trying to be relatively positive. He did qualify it with, I let some of the plays extend a little bit, and they can't get sacked, and so I think what he was trying to do, or what Nebraska was trying to do, is just get a look at what it looks like, with these quarterbacks able to operate without a pass rush coming at them. Obviously, Nebraska can blitz QBs and do a lot of different things, and it also may look like on Saturday at the spring game, if those touchbacks are real, they may not be able to make some of the plays that they were able to make. I have to kind of take him at as much face value as I can, just based on the fact that I don't get to see practice. So, he's the head coach of the team, so he can say what he wants to say, and we'll report that. I would assume that it was their best day, their best scrimmage since he's been there. I mean, unless he's forgetting something, I think I can take him at that face value. We'll see how good of a performance they put forth in the spring game.
Sam, do you believe him when he says he doesn't remember who did the 99-yard drive? Because that was the one time where I was like,
hello?
Yeah. Sam, you there?
You there, Sam?
Oh.
Uh-oh. Are you going through?
Hello.
Sam?
Hi, Sam. Are you
hear us?
underwater? An abyss. Sam?
Shane, can we get him back?
Shane, let's go get Sam back, please.
Okay.
Thank you. So, the interesting thing about that, and I want to hear your follow-up. Do you know what I think it is?
What's that?
Again, but I am getting kind of verified here the last couple of days. You know what I think it is?
What's that?
I think it's relative to what he's seen.
Dominant to what he's seen?
Yep.
That's fair.
Because he quantified it with the amount of turnovers.
Yep.
And it was only the one.
On third team, he said.
Yep. And I know that hadn't happened.
Sure.
In a year and a half. And if I go back to the barometer, is it better than have been bad, or is it dominant as in
actually good?
It's baseline good.
Sam's back.
Sam, can you hear us?
You there, Sam? Shane?
I think something else is going on. Sam,
hey, Sam, you there?
I think something else is going on because it sounded like he was still on the line when we hung up, Shane. So can we see what's going on?
Good thing Sasha walked in. That's for darn sure.
Yeah, like you just hung up. It still sound. I'm still getting.
I can still hear him, so you haven't completely hung up with Sam.
Or there's something going on with the feed. Either way. Yeah, because I'm getting a weird feedback thing too.
As am I. As am I.
No, yeah, that's a fair question, right? Because
remember when I was like, yeah, when I say it feels like football, it's not because I've been watching bad football and it's just better than bad.
Yeah, it feels like actual football.
It feels like actual football.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I'm trending, so I might as well write it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's just because it's been better than anything he's seen. Because there have been some go all the way back to last year, and I remember I was like, I don't know.
Been some rough stuff on offense.
Yeah, I don't know.
Boy,
right? I'm not
know.
Making that. It's not revisionist history. I'm like,
no, that's real. You were accurate on that.
I said, how are they going to score?
Yeah, and they didn't. Not a lot.
I'm like, how are these guys going to get chunk plays?
Well, and the nice thing about and maybe this isn't fair. But I grade the offense and the defense a little differently, right? Because they're starting at different points.
Yeah, so you're going to be grading the defense on their peak last year.
Yes,
okay.
And you're grading the offense almost on a curve.
All right, there we go. I think we have Sam. Are you with us?
I am back.
Yeah, let's go.
Sam, we appreciate you working with us through there. So I will say the one thing where I maybe didn't take Coach Rhule at his word a little bit was, do you believe that he didn't remember who had the 99-yard drive? Because I don't believe that.
Well, I'm the one who asked. He looked over
Yep.
at Susan, and I think both of them said Heinrich. And then he wasn't sure he remembered. I wanted to ask that. I think just to know. I think the lead a 99-yard drive in a scrimmage is a good thing.
For sure.
And so who's the quarterback who led that? And he said he didn't remember. He wasn't sure if it was Ripper. So I guess it wasn't Danny.
So, Sam, this is weird because part of me wants not to believe him, but two things. Number one, he does so many things during a goddamn practice, right? He may be getting into a coach, a player. He may pull a couple of guys to the side. Like he is everywhere. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he maybe didn't know. But here's the other thing. I asked him about something last Saturday, and he responded to me that he didn't basically know what I was talking about. And it was arguably the biggest thing that happened during the practice. And I remember thinking to myself, did he black out? Like, I'm dead serious, Sam. I don't know if he's so intense and I joked with him. I was like, did you just have like a Will Ferrell old school moment? He didn't really remember what I was talking about during the course of a practice. And I kind of believed him.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think he's pretty intense.
I was just getting ready to say he revs exceptionally high.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's pretty common for a lot of coaches, but he has really good recall after the fact, because the question I asked him about the third down defense on Saturday, and I wrote about it today, he had really good recall about the game that obviously sticks in their craw, which was that Wisconsin game where they go 14-0 early. And I'm sure they've thought about that game a lot and, had that crowd out of it. Wisconsin's on the ropes. They had really struggled the week before. And Nebraska's defense kind of let them back in it. I know the offense made a mistake and didn't get a fourth down, but it was more the defense. And so he knew the game that, that really bothered him and frustrated him from a third down perspective. And I found that notable. So he's got really good recall. I think short-term memory can sort of wax and wane depending on what you're trying to get done. And then, I don't know if many coaches. So we talked to recruit after recruit after recruit, and the recruits say they've never seen a head coach do what he does.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what. Now maybe this happened 25 years ago, but they've never seen a head coach at a college practice do what he does. He's a lot of times. Just talked to one recruit who said, who's probably going to commit eventually, who said, a lot of times at the practices, the coaches are kind of just standing in the back, or they might be like half step away or even in a tower, and Rhule is in the middle of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's actually rare. I think Rhule likes doing that. That's something he enjoys, so he does it. But I could see him not always necessarily being aware of everything that's going on in the moment. Sure, absolutely.
I mean, I watched a drive last Saturday where he had four. He had three of the guys in green jerseys, and his back was to the direction they were going because he was talking to the quarterback. So, I mean, I don't know. He does. I just never. The whole chess checkers thing kind of makes me question myself sometimes. But man,
right,
he makes it pretty believable. Maybe he's just significantly smarter than what I think. But I do know, like I have said, I remember the couple of meltdowns that I've had, like at practice or at halftime. Like I remember them, but I don't really recall what I couldn't recreate them. I mean, I had one against Southwest that everybody says was legendary, and I don't have a clue what I said, Sam.
Right. I think that's pretty common. I think that Rhule, he coaches hard in practice. I think he does so also in the games. I for example, I think it's going to benefit them to have Glenn Thomas on the sideline, because I thought there were times last season where Rhule was almost becoming the quarterback coach. And it's not that he doesn't know how to do it. He does, actually. He knows how to coach literally every position on the field. I just didn't always think that was, you've got to have a person who manages the totality of the game. And I felt like at times, especially when Satterfield went upstairs to call the plays, I'm not saying the play calling didn't get better. In some ways it did. They were able to hit some big plays later in became like Matt Rhule's job to explain to Harper what's going on. And I didn't feel like it went well. And so I thought it was really important that they get a coach in the off season so that Rhule doesn't have to divert 47 seconds of his attention to the finer points of that position. I do think they're going to be better for that one change alone. I also will be curious to see, including on Saturday, just how all three quarterbacks handle the operation. You know, who plays well, who doesn't, who does the mechanical stuff right, like the stuff that happens in the first 3 or 4 seconds of a play versus the outcome of the play.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how that operation looks. I'll be curious to see how it goes.
Sam, speaking of Saturday, how much do you think we're actually going to see, right? Because I know they're probably going to keep it pretty vanilla in terms of play calling, but in terms of personnel, do you think they're going to try and hide some of that as well? Or just what are your expectations for Saturday?
I don't know that they have to show, you know, all of the senior guys. You know, I don't know how much Jamal Banks is going to play. You know, that's a question mark. I don't know that everybody kind of knows what Emmett Johnson is. I don't know that he needs to play and carry the ball 17 times. I suppose he might. I do think some of the young players would benefit from the experience of being out on the field. So that means all of the young corners, all of the young receivers, maybe not Jalen Lloyd, maybe not Malachi Coleman, he's banged up, but Corey Barney, Paul, Demetrius Bell, if he's healthy. We'll find all those out probably on Thursday for Rhule. Some of the young tight ends, you know, I think they like their tight end group. We don't know a lot about them. We know a lot about Fedoni and Borkercher. We don't know much about the guys that are on hand or Smith Flores, you know, or we'll learn more about that group. I think the offensive linemen need to play. Tulla, Sledge, maybe not Ben Scott, maybe not Bryce Benhart, but definitely need to see the picture of Justin Evans Jenkins and Sledge at a guard, you know, that kind of stuff. I think that's absolutely in play for Saturday. And then on the defensive side, you really do need to see how some of those young backers and young corners play. So if you expose some personnel, that's just kind of life. You know, there's going to be some guys in that secondary who are pretty young, who are probably going to get pressed into action. It's just, and not because Nebraska doesn't like their older guys. I think they've got some young guys that they like quite a bit, and we'll see some of those guys on Saturday.
Yeah. So the thing I always wonder about their personality and kind of what they're doing. I wonder if this is the kind of staff that in year 2 of an offensive basically overhaul, I'm not sure they'll care what they run. Right? Because I don't know if you can afford. I guess you can be vanilla and that's fine, but maybe vanilla is who they need to be. Do you know what I mean? Like it could just be It could just be what it is, and there is no real gamesmanship to it.
Like they could win 8 games with having just an average offense, right? I mean, somewhere in that neighborhood.
You hope, yeah. I could see
the worst offense in 50 years.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Like if you're just functional, you can win 8 games.
Because that's what they had last year was the worst offense in 50 years.
Yeah.
So that's why, Sam, and I'm not.
So maybe vanilla is what you order. Like
Yeah,
maybe that's what's on the menu.
I'm not Denny Downer, and it's not just because I like vanilla bean, but
underrated.
It's fantastic. Maybe it's just that when you were so bad with the turnover margin and so poor offensively, you can hear what he says when he said, okay, it's the best day of offense we've had. He's probably telling the truth, but that doesn't that there's no magic that says, oh yeah, that's capable of being good enough against UTEP in 3 months. Do you know what I mean? It could just be relative to where they have been. Now, if you heard that from the defense and you had seen the defense play at high levels for stretches, even though now we've talked ourselves out of it that they weren't very good because they played bad offenses too. That's kind of just the nature of a fan. But it would probably move our needle a little more.
Yeah, it would. First to the defense. The defense was great last year in so many different ways. I think this weekend's NFL draft results will again show, though, that like they're doing it. They're not doing it with Ohio State players.
Mm.
And so, some of the things that Nebraska's defense has to improve on is related to recruiting and talent development, and also a little bit better on third down. There's some stats in what I wrote today that underline why they would have been frustrated with their third down performance last season. As it relates to the offense, I think relative to what it was last year, if Nebraska is 4 to 6 points better this season, it will win 2 to 3 more games.
Mm-hmm.
As a result, I think the schedule lines up. And again, the question of and this is what people don't always necessarily understand in the way that you do. When they say vanilla, they're talking about what? What do they mean by that? What do they mean by vanilla? Because a fan will watch the game and say whatever, but what do they mean by that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's that's a really good point, because vanilla doesn't mean it's not without it's whatever. Vanilla is a standard in which you want to operate where you don't have to get outside yourself to execute well, right? So the getting outside yourself part is relevant to what you think you're comfortable doing. That's the baseline. And it's my vanilla may not be, well, let's say, Millard South's vanilla may not be the same as Westside's vanilla,
Mm-hmm.
or USC's vanilla may not be the same thing as Gretna's vanilla.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So
Right. Yeah.
I do think it's important to make that distinction, because you go in with a concept of who you think you are. And vanilla means how close can we stay to that without having to get off track. That's kind of how I would explain it in a nutshell.
Because last year, for example, I wouldn't describe last year's team, the run game that Nebraska's offense had, as necessarily vanilla.
Oh, I
They
completely
were
agree.
doing a lot of
I completely agree.
Because they
Sam.
felt like they had to make anything work.
Right.
That's pretty.
Right.
That's a great call, Sam.
They were doing a lot of different stuff, and so it didn't always work, or it became less effective. But
Mm-hmm.
Incorporating the option and some of those power plays that Osborne used to run, that I assume Ron Brown talked to him about.
Yeah, and you're running split zone, you're running duo.
Right.
There was
Then
a
you're
lot
in the option pass.
there was
or
a
the
lot. There was a
wrinkle
lot in that running game. I completely agree with that.
So what I would assume they mean, and wouldn't have almost every team wants to do. Almost every team wants to be able to say, we've got a good enough offensive line that we're going to, even whether we're from under center or we're from the shotgun, we're going to run inside zone and outside zone. Now, they've talked about running a stretch zone, which would be interesting. I'm intrigued to see that, if that's what they actually want to do. Iowa runs that, for people who are listening. But they want to be able to run inside zone and outside zone, run those very effectively, then have maybe some man blocking plays, gap scheme plays, and then be able to throw the ball. And so, if by vanilla they mean we are going to be the best inside zone running team in the Big Ten, that's great. If you can gain yards consistently on that play, and you don't need to, your backs are good enough and your line's good enough and all that, you don't have to go to the second and third and fourth iteration of your run game. That's great. I don't know what it means in the pass game, and I'm not sure it's going to be that vanilla. I think they're as the season goes on, and Dylan presumably, but whatever quarterback gets a little bit more comfortable, I think they will add more and more things to their pass game. They will try to, because they're going to have to add things to beat better teams. You don't beat Ohio State with 6 pass plays. It just doesn't work like that. So I'll be curious to see what we see on Saturday, and then how it builds over the rest of the season when it comes.
Sam, real quick, got about a minute left here with you. When you hear him tell stories about Charlie Brewer from Baylor and say, he was a starter after a little bit as a freshman, but then had a competition as a sophomore, what do you think he's preparing us for when he tells us those stories?
In that particular case, I think, again, he has really good recall. I don't know that we're getting prepared for anything, because I think there might only be about 4 people in that room that even know what the 2018 and 2019 Baylor teams look like.
Mm-hmm.
So if he's preparing anybody for anything, maybe he's preparing his team to understand that they're going to have to compete, and that, you know, he loves players who take it on themselves and don't have their parents weigh in. But yeah, there's a lot of people in there that, like, the thing that animates most people covering the team about Rhule is the way that he talked about culture, and probably the way that he talked about NIL, getting into that sort of roster dynamic with Charlie Brewer. Again, that's deep in the weeds. I find that interesting. I remember Charlie Brewer. I think he was a good player. I think Nebraska would benefit from having a player like that. But I think that's just Rhule going off into whatever, you know, tangent he is in that moment. He has a lot of collective experience in so many different ways. You know, he can, very few coaches can talk about, you know, a 0-star at Temple and then an all-pro like Christian McCaffrey with the Panthers. Very few people could do that in the span of 7 years of coaching. And so he's able to move across the spectrum that, frankly, I think helps them in recruiting, because I think players understand that he can kind of connect over here and he can kind of connect over there.
That's Sam McKewon from Omaha World-Herald. Sam, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, Sam.
Take care.